Thanks for joining us today. My name is Adam Jacobs. I'm a Federal Solution Architect with Qlik. We're going to show you today what we would have been showing at the PDI conference. The data here is from usaspending.gov. In other words, it is FPDS data. So this data is from 2011 through the most recent data in 2020. It's about 38 million records, 90 gigabytes of data. And we're going to go through a few areas of how you can use this application to actually analyze the data from FPDS in a very fast manner. So first thing I want to do though is talk about what makes this different from other visualization tools. So we're going to talk about the associative versus query-based tools difference. So here we have the same data at the top here and the bottom here. Okay, so at the bottom, this is meant to simulate a query-based tool experience and what a query-based tool is going to show you. And at the top is meant to experience what Qlik's associative model is going to show you. Again, same data top and bottom. But let's say that I'm interested in looking at DoD, or the Department of Defense. I want to look at what Department of Defense is spending in nuclear ordnance as the parent product or service code and what they're spending for nuclear bombs. Now, so far, I haven't actually asked for anything that you can't ask for in a query-based tool, but what I'm seeing is a very different experience. So in the query-based tool, I'm getting exactly what I asked for from agency, parent product or service code, and the product or service code. And I'm getting anything that has to do with that. I'm getting the where clause for fiscal year. And so I'm seeing all the various fiscal years here where that is, where those terms come up. Okay? Now, up top, Qlik is going to show me that information also. In green, I'm seeing what I've asked for, and in white, I'm seeing what is associated with what I asked for, or the where. Now, there are two other colors here. Let's talk about the dark gray first. The dark gray, that is like the where not. So Qlik is able to write this where not clause at the exact same time, and the reason is because it's not actually doing a query. So what I'm seeing here is that these are the years where Department of Defense has not purchased nuclear bombs. Now, I probably could have figured that out down here eventually by taking a look at what years are there and deducing what years are missing, but that's only a list of 10 values, so I can ultimately do that. The challenge is when this list starts becoming 30 values, 50 values, 100 values, 200 values. Seeing what is associated and what is not associated becomes much more difficult. And so Qlik is always pointing that out because that may be the most interesting bit of information. What is actually not associated with what I've selected? And especially if it is not expected information that you expected to see. Now there's another color here, the dark, or the light gray, I should say. The light gray is showing me values in a field where there is already a selection that are associated with my other selections. So, in other words, what I'm seeing here is that not only has Department of Defense purchased nuclear bombs, but so has the Department of Justice and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Now, I'm not sure why the Department of Justice needs to purchase nuclear bombs. I would never think to ask, hey, what is the Department of Justice doing with nuclear bombs? And you can see down here, that's not even showing up for us. We have no idea the Department of Justice is purchasing nuclear bombs, but we can see it here. Because we can see it here, now we can pivot on that information. And if we pivot on that information, we're going to get some more information here. Okay, so we're going to see that it's only 2 years, and those span across just 2 total contracting actions. And the total spend is only a little over $11,000, which kind of tells me this probably isn't actually a nuclear bomb. So let's explore this a little bit further. I'm going to go to a new view here. In this new view, you can see I still have my existing selections from before. Okay, so those are still there. Even in the new view, those are going to persist. All right, and down below, I can get some information. I can first see that, hey, it's just a single vendor, Remington Arms Company, which I'm pretty sure Remington does not sell nuclear bombs. And looking here at the contract description, I'm seeing Remington shotguns for W/AR. So one thing I have a question on is, hey, if I see this product or service code here of 1105 for nuclear bombs, how similar is that product or service code to shotguns or guns. And up here we have parent, product, or service, and I can see that weapons is listed as a 10. If I click on weapons and unselect nuclear ordnance, and I looked at the product or service codes, I can see 1005, which is very similar to 1105. That's guns through 30 millimeters. So that's what someone meant to enter in, but they accidentally entered in 1105 instead of 1005. So it was just a data entry error, which is good to know, but we wouldn't have even seen that without the query-based tool. We wouldn't have known that there's an error in our data, and we wouldn't have known to go fix it. But now I know that. I know it's there, and I know that I can take the action to alert whoever I need to alert that, hey, there's some data in here that is not conducive to our analysis, that is actually incorrect. If we go to this sheet here, we can get a sense for what a dashboard might actually look like. First of all, we're seeing some high-level numbers here. We're looking at $4.6 trillion in spend. We're looking at 38.2 million contracting actions across 442,000 vendors. Now, in this dashboard, everything here is very interactive. For example, I can quickly say I want to look at Department of Defense, and all I have to do is just click on Department of Defense. It applies that filter up here, and then everything's going to update with that new filter. If I take a look at some of the top parent product or service codes, notice that as I make these selections, everything starts to update. Okay? Now, what if I don't know exactly where I need to go in order to get the information I need? For example, I need to find out what the Army is spending on weapons. Okay? I don't want to try to figure out exactly where to go to find Army and weapons and all of this. What I want to do is I just want to search, similar to a Google search. Right? Everyone's familiar with a Google search. So I'm just going to type in Army, weapons, and look at that. What this has done is it's broken out my search terms by all of the different fields in my data. I could keep saying show me more. It's going to show me where all those terms exist, whether it's in the same area or between two different fields. Same field or two different fields. So you see the first one up here, contract description, weapons, Army. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is level 2 category of weapons, and I'm looking for contract office agency ID at Department of the Army. So here we go. I'll make those selections, and so now I can see what the Army has spent on weapons. I can see here some information about how that's changed over time. From 2011 on, it was pretty much averaging about flat as far as a trend, but recently the trend has been going up. And we can see some very high purchases at the end of Q4 for 2018 and 2019. Okay, I can also see here, if I look at spend by vendor, I can see how that breaks out by all the various vendors across all of my vendors, all my 534 vendors that sell weapons to the Department of Army. Specifically, if I'm interested in looking at the top 5, I can just go ahead and select those. And now once I select those, I can move to my next page here and I can see some more information. Notice again, everything is maintaining as I move between different views. I can see here that a vast majority, 99.1% of all of these are not competed. I can see that not available for competition, it makes up almost the rest of that. Full and open competition, you can see here it's 0.2% of everything having to do with weapons with these 5 vendors. Okay, now if I click up here on this drop down, I can see all of the different sheets or all of the different views that are interesting to me that I may want to look at. I can see, for instance, spend by location here. If I pull up spend by location, this is going to show me where all of the places of performances are for all of these various spends. And if I want to, for instance, look at, well, what's going on where the places of performance are outside of the US, I can actually lasso that information. So I can lasso that. That narrows things down to a spend of 116 million, 8 contracting actions, 22 total contracting action, 8 contracts, 21 total contracting actions, and only 3 vendors. And now if I want to build out a report about that, I can go here to my sheet that has an ad hoc report builder. Maybe what I'm interested in looking at is I want to see the signed year. I want to see the parent vendor. And I want to see the contract descriptions. Okay, I want to see what the total spend was for each of these as well too. Some of them $0 because they're just modifications. Some of them money. I can see it adding up to that total spend right there. And now what I can do is I can go ahead and I can export this data to a Excel sheet. Okay, so I'm going to back out here, go back to our contract spend dashboard. Now let's say, for example, that I need to look at information in a different way. I like this dashboard mostly, but I want to make a few tweaks and changes to it. What I don't want to do is I don't want to mess up everyone else's view of this, and the admins don't want me messing up everyone else's view of this either. This is viewed by a lot of different people. If I can just go in and make any edit that I want, all of a sudden no one can trust the data that's in this application. We don't want that. We want people to be able to trust the data, because if they trust the data, then they can take action on the information they see right away as opposed to trying to validate it too much. So if I need to change my view, instead of being able to edit this sheet specifically, what I can do is I can duplicate this sheet. If I duplicate it, now this sheet is going to appear in this area here called My Sheets. Okay? So I got this contracting spend dashboard under My Sheets. Only I can see my sheets. No one else can see them. So because they're my sheets and only I can see them, now I can make edits. For example, maybe I don't need this spend by vendor bar chart here. I can take that out. And instead, I want to add in a visualization that looks at spend by location. Well, all I have to do is just drag that onto my screen here, and now I have spend by location that's colored by total spend. Let's say, for example, I want to edit this particular chart here. I like that it's showing me a trend going on here, but I want to see a slightly different trend as well. If I go into my data, go to my expression, what I can see here for the, what I can see here is I can add a trend line. I have the trend line here. This is looking at third degree polynomial trend. If I add a trend line, I can now make it an average just across the entire data set, or I can see what's the linear. The linear doesn't change too much over time. Maybe I want to see what the fourth degree polynomial is and be able to compare those two. So I add that fourth degree polynomial just to see what that trend is changing a little bit more rapidly as things move. Okay? So what I can also do is I can say, well, I want to add in a whole new visualization entirely. Well, I can either build something out myself, or if I take this visualization out to give me some room, what I can do is I can actually use artificial intelligence to figure out what I want to show. And that's just by clicking on this Insight Advisor up here. Okay? So with this Insight Advisor, this is going to look through my data and it's going to try to give me guesses of what I'd like to see. I can either hit Generate Insights here, and this will generate a number of different insights from my data that I can use in my sheet. Or maybe I want to ask a question. For instance, if I ask, what is total spend? Well, if I ask what is total spend, Qlik's going to read that as natural language. It's going to parse out certain things that I'm asking for. And it's going to say, all right, well, we figure out the total spend is a measure in your data, so we think that probably it's best exemplified by this particular visualization, which is just a number that you can look at. There's also other visualizations that you may be interested in that have total spend in them. Maybe I say, I want to know what is total spend by signed year. If I ask what is total spend by signed year, Qlik's going to say, well, you're trying to look at this over time, so what we think you want to see is a line chart. And I can even, if I click here, I can see exactly why it thought I would want a line chart for that. And maybe I want this to be a little bit more specific. Not only do I want total spend by signed year, but I want it just for Department of Defense. Here we go. Agency name of Department of Defense. So now if I do that, it's going to automatically apply a filter in my visualization to say, hey, we're going to show you the spend over time, but specifically we're just going to look at Department of Defense. I like this. I'm going to add this to my sheet. So I add this to my contract spend dashboard here. I close out insights, and there's my visualization. Total spend over signed year, and it is only looking at agency name Department of Defense. Now, if I really like this and I have the permissions to do so, I may want to publish this out so that other people can see my dashboard. Okay? So what I can do is if I go up here, find the sheet in my sheets, and I right click, I'm going to have the option to publish this. If I publish it, it's going to make sure that I definitely want to do that. I click publish, and now this moves to an area called published by me. So what other people will see, they'll see it as a community sheet. We notice that someone else has already published a similar duplicate of this particular sheet in the community area. So this is a good way for people to be able to determine, hey, was this particular view built by the original developers and has it been totally blessed? Or is this something that the community has put out there, which means it may be good information. I just got to take it with a grain of salt, and I've just got to make sure I take some time to verify that this is the right information and things were calculated correctly. Okay? So this is a great way to maintain governance of data, but making sure that you're not actually opening things up for people to just edit anything they want, because that can turn into the wild, wild west. And as we know, then people start not trusting the data. And if they don't trust the data, there's no point in even giving them the analytics, because they're going to end up having to go back and try to verify and spend a bunch of time doing that instead of acting on the information that they see. Okay. Now, a couple other things that that I want to make sure that that I show you guys. A lot of times, people don't want to have to go into a physical computer, log in to be able to look at their data. Well, two good things about that. One thing is that this is all something that can be viewed on a mobile device. Everything is HTML5 interactive, so if someone were to log into Qlik from their iPhone or their iPad, everything's going to adjust to that screen size. But what if they just want to ask a few questions and go along with their day? Well, that's where the Insight Bot comes into play. Insight Bot can be deployed in a number of different areas. It can be deployed inside Qlik itself. It can be deployed on a number of different messaging features. And what I'm going to show you is this deployed on Microsoft Teams. Okay, so here's my chatbot. You can say hello to it, make sure that it is actually responding to me currently. There we go. It is responding to me today. That's great. So now what we may want to do is we may want to say, well, let's ask it a few questions, such as, what is total spend? So if we ask it what is total spend, it's going to try to figure out what I'm asking exactly. It's going to parse things out. It's going to give me a number, and it's going to give me some information about that. Okay, I currently have insights enabled, which means that not only is it showing me a graph of the total spend over time, but it's going to give me some information about that data, such as what the maximum reduction on percentage base observed was, which is 82.8% compared to the previous month, and so that I can use this information that might be a little bit more interesting. So we might want to ask something like, what is DoD's spend last year? So we ask, what is DoD's spend last year? We can see it's giving us a bit of information. It's looking at that dip and rise. It's giving me some insights enabled, which is great information. Maybe I say, hey, show that to me by its sub-agencies. So now what it's going to do, it's going to remember what I asked for before, but it's going to break things down into further sub-agencies that are going to be important to me. Now maybe you say, I like that as a bar chart, but I think it's going to be more interesting to say, hey, show that as a pie chart. So now what it'll do is it'll build it out as a pie chart so that I can see that information. Or I can even get really specific with this. I can say, show me the top 10 recipient states and the total spend for each. And there we go. Now it's broken all that down. I can, and now this might be the bit of information I was most interested in. So now I can say, email that to me. And so what it's going to do, it's going to take a minute. It's going to send me an email. And once I get in my email, I can show what this looks like to you guys. So here we go. It was just sent just now. Seeing those broken down, I'm seeing all of the bits of information that it found, the insights. I'm seeing the bar chart, and it's giving me a link back to the specific app where this is working from. Okay. Now, additionally, I may even be able to set up alerts for myself. So, alert me when the total spend of MD exceeds 15 billion. So if I set up that alert, I can choose which exactly I'm interested in, whether it's recipient state or congressional district. I'll say recipient state. Alert already exists. Great, because I've done this before, so I will now always be alerted when the spend for Maryland exceeds 15 billion. Okay. So with that, that concludes this portion of the presentation. What I'd like to do is open it up to questions from the audience. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them now. Okay, a couple of questions have come in through the chat. First one, can you show or represent total cost for mission activities? Yes, you can do that. A couple different ways to do that. You could show that in a single chart, such as this one here, where instead of it being spent by agency, it's spent by mission activities. Be able to view it that way. Or it can be something separate where you have something like this visualization here that shows total spend. And all you're doing is you're just selecting the different mission activities that you want to see so that you can understand what those total costs might be. Okay, second question. We have multiple data sources from different organizations. Is it possible to put these data sets together? Yes, it absolutely is possible to put these data sets together. Nice thing about Qlik is that because we're not a query-based tool, we are an in-memory tool. Once you've loaded the data into Qlik, Qlik doesn't care where that data is coming from. It can do filters and searches across all of that data, all these different disparate data sets together, and be able to provide those types of insights. And you're able to tie those different data sets together via shared fields, field links, keys that you can determine inside of the data model inside Qlik. So that's actually a great differentiator of Qlik, is our ability to tie data sets from multiple different sources together without it really mattering where the data set came from, as long as there is a possibility of being able to connect to that data source. Another question here. Our management is used to seeing things in a certain way. Is there a way to distribute a common structured report that is taking live data across a broader audience? So I think what you're asking here is you want to build out an application, set of visualizations, and make that available to your stakeholders or to your management. So what you would do is you would design an application in such a way that does look the way that you want your management to see it, that your management is used to seeing it. You can either do that within Qlik. There's actually even the ability to create mashups so that you can really get very custom with how this looks. And then once you have it created, you publish that application. So when it's published, it becomes available for multiple users to interact with it. And in this case, what you would do is you would create that capability. You would publish it, and you would publish it in a place where management has access to be able to see the data and interact with it. And the data would be as live as you need it to be. Essentially, it's a matter of loading in data on intervals that make sense. Maybe it's nightly, maybe it's hourly, etc. And they're able to interact with that data, point, click, etc., as much as they need to. Another question here. This is great, but in the DoD, there are times that certain data shouldn't be seen by everyone. Is there a way to set permissions for who can see what? Yes, there is. Without going into too much detail, you can create these options of basically secured folders inside Qlik known as streams, utilizing different users' roles from things like Active Directory or LDAPs. You can lock down who can see which streams. Even within those streams, you can lock down who can see certain applications. And then even within an application, you can use something called section access that also takes advantage of those roles that will show and hide information depending on who a user is. So, for example, if a user comes in and they're only allowed to see Department of Veterans Affairs, well, this is essentially the view that they're going to see here, is that they would see that the agency ID, they wouldn't see up here agency ID Department of Veterans Affairs. It would just already be pre-filtered on Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay. Okay, and we're pretty much at the top of the hour here. I don't see any other questions right now. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, we'll be sending out this recording to everyone later on today. Thanks very much.